I'm Corbett Wall with EV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, August the 10th, brought to you in part by Vitalix. Vitalix has multiple options for controlling and repelling the fly population in your herd. I recently had a testimonial from a feeder flash gang member that said this is the first time he hasn't had a fly problem because he got Vitalix tubs with fly control put in them. Get the blue tub. Go to Vitalix.com. The Texas live cattle contract. And you think, what are you talking about there? Well, that's what a lot of my northern cattle feeder friends are calling the CME live cattle contract now. It has a much better indication of what cattle are bringing in Texas than what they're bringing in the northern feedlot areas by far. So you had the August live cattle futures close on Tuesday at right basically 138. Well, we've already seen cattle trade in the northern plains from 144 to 146. That's not even close. But the latest market in Texas is 136. Well, you got your Texas hedged feeders thinking about using your CME contract as a marketing tool, and we're already seeing the delivery game started because we've got past the point where they can do that now, but it's all down in the Texas feedlot areas. The only place we're seeing any action in the delivery is in Tulia, Delhart, and Clovis. Why would you even think about delivering anything if you were further north than that? Even if you're in Kansas, you can afford to truck those cattle, and you could probably entice a northern buyer to buy them, towards the bottom of the northern price range, which is well ahead of the southern price range. But that's the complexion of the fed cattle of trade right now. And what it's doing, this big disparage between the southern market and the northern market, and then your CME contracts lining up with the southern market, what it's doing is it's rubbing out independent feeders in the south because they cannot plan on a basis, which usually helps keep them afloat, which is the difference between cash and futures. You've got your northern feeders that are hedging. They're enjoying a $6-8 basis whenever they sell, plus they're getting a better market for their cattle, and then you've got no deals for your independent cattle feeders in the south. So all your big corporates and your bigger feeding operations that have the sweetheart formula deals, they're getting to skate by on this. They always have the advantage. They have a guaranteed kill space, so they can have their cattle shipped in and processed when they're at peak efficiency, and they have the sweetheart deal, which they've negotiated with these packers because they have what? Volume. And that is the only real premium you get is for volume on those sweetheart formula deals. So they know how their cattle kill. They can buy cattle that'll hit the peaks in those, and they get something a lot of times closer to what the northern plains is getting in their regular cash market. But it's just rubbing out our independent cattle feeders in the southern plains and our independent custom feed yards in the south that have to try to negotiate for some kind of a market. So, they're getting, the packers are getting a little bit of pushback. We're talking a lot about this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. We've got the guys in the northern plains negotiating for even more cattle than what they have been in recent years. They've got the leverage on these guys. We're getting into tight numbers. They're going to keep the leverage on these guys, these big four packers, and make them pay for those better cattle that they're feeding up there. So what have they decided to do? They decided we're going to start at the bottom and push up like that. So that's where we're at on there. We've got a Texas live cattle contract that everybody's trying to work with, but it's settled at 138 on Tuesday afternoon. Our market is almost 141, the last established market. What's that? That's your 5-area weighted average price, which was I think 140.86. So that's nearly 141. We're in the spot month of August, and 138 is the best we can do on that. And you think, well, why don't the guys go down there, take delivery of those? Why don't your feed yards go down there, take delivery of those, bring them up into the northern market? And you say, oh, because those cattle down in the south are all coon shit. They're not. There's a lot of good cattle in the south. And most of the cattle that they bring to delivery are pretty good cattle, because those cattle have to stand on their merits. You know, still, I've probably graded more delivery cattle than anybody in the last 20 years, because in the early 2000s I was grading at every delivery site, because I was kind of a free rein there in St. Joe, Missouri. So I know how that works very well. Those cattle have to stand on their own four legs. So you grade them individually. You don't grade them as a load like we did years and years ago. So they'll get paid on those cattle. You know, you can't bring any Mexican cattle in there, so you don't have to worry about that. And so they're pretty good cattle that they bring to delivery. Why don't the northern guys go down in there, get those cattle, and bring them up into the northern market? Well, we've got freight. You take the freight from the Texas Panhandle to Nebraska or western Iowa, and it's $6 to $8 a hundred. Well, that's the premium right there that they're getting. So that's not working. So what happens with those cattle that they deliver? Well, usually there's nobody there that wants to take delivery of them. You know, you could do that if you could put those cattle and get them right back on feed and get them going again, and then put them back up on the market. But everybody knows what goes on those deliveries. Your packers don't really want the cattle. They penalize those cattle whenever you get ready to sell them. Nobody really wants to put them on feed, especially when it's summertime, when it's really hot. It's hard to get those cattle back on feed. They're not going to like the ration as well as they liked it where they came from. And a lot of times they'll end up getting acidosis. They'll go off feed. It'll be a total wreck. So what happens with those cattle? Well, there's penalties that are incurred. So if you know, either the guy that delivers them, that tenders those cattle for delivery, will take them back and be able to collect a penalty from the guy that was delivered on your longest long. He'll have to pay a penalty not to take them, and your guy that tenders on them will take that penalty and keep that, and that'll be a bonus for him. Then he'll go right on down the road. Or like last delivery period, there'll be penalties on those cattle, and then the packer will go in, scoop up those, and take the cattle. So, and a lot of times what I'm hearing from these managers at these delivery sites is they don't even know what's going on. They've got crews ready to work those cattle when they come, and they get scooped up and taken off the delivery process the night before. CME doesn't even tell them, give them a heads up of what's going on, which is ridiculous. CME does not like delivery. All they want to do is have a medium for people to play in, for people to trade commodities, and they don't want to have to really do anything. Well, that causes undue stress and expense when you're doing that. But you know, it's not really healthy here. I think it's probably time, and I can't believe that I'm saying this. I can't believe that I'm saying this, but I think it's probably time that we go to cash settlement on your live cattle contract. You know, having the live delivery option or the carcass delivery, having real delivery of the product is really the only thing that puts any teeth in it and keeps our open interest up and keeps people trading in that live cattle contract. That's why everybody's jumped from the feeder cattle contract when they went to cash settlement there, because it's not real. But you know, if we're here at maturation of that contract, we're in mid-August here. It's closing at 138. They're selling cattle at 144, 146. Our weighted average in your 5-area feeding region is almost 141. You know, what good is it doing? Now, a lot of your northern feeders are liking the deal. They're not making fun of it, because they're hedging the cattle, selling the cattle up in the mid-140s, and keeping that $6 to $8 basis to put in their pocket. Well, what fairness is that to the guys in the Southern Plains that are trying to compete? if you've got cattle, I've told you this before, if you've got feeder cattle and you live in Missouri or Kentucky, Virginia or somewhere like that, you've got good cattle, you're wanting to maintain ownership of them, you're wanting to feed those out, where are you going to send them? Are you going to send them to the southern plains where you have no basis, and you have no market, and you have no sweetheart deal? If you're not with a corporate or major cattle feeder that handles huge volumes of cattle, or are you going to send them up north to a farmer feeder that's got room, which none of them have room right now because they're feeding cattle there? You're going to try to find somebody in the north that will take those cattle and feed them for you, and so you'll have a basis, you'll have a good market, you'll have leverage, you'll get some say in how the cattle sell. It's a much better deal. But this whole atmosphere of the way things are going right now has kind of made your CME live cattle futures contract a joke, and the northern feeders call it the Texas live cattle contract. Let's talk about your board. On Tuesday, August live cattle down 37 cents at 137.97. Like I said, 138, which is a far cry from the market. October down 105 at 143.17. Your back months on live cattle down 25 cents to down 80. August feeder cattle down 247 at 178.80. September down 315 at 182.50. Your back months on feeder cattle were all down 90 cents to down 212. And I was talking with one of my friends there who sold some cattle that I'm going to mention here later when I talk about your feeder cattle. He says, do you think that these feeder cattle futures contracts will hit the early to mid 190s next spring? And I said, yeah, they probably will. They're probably going to hit it before then. We're selling cattle that high in places. Our index is slow coming up, but just like on your live cattle contract, your feeder cattle contract doesn't really seem to care what the cash price is on them. It's been floating way higher here for all summer long, pretty much. So yeah, I do think they'll get up there to those 190s. Now, what about the lineup of December next December fats for that? For 2023. What do you think about that at 158? I don't see that happening. I don't see the 157.5 in April. I mean, somebody's going to have to really spur that thing along. And when it's consistently running $5, $6, $8 behind the cash market, how are you ever going to get that live cattle contract up to these prices that it's advertising? And that's why everybody shorts the market, and that's what helps keep a lid on the market all the time. We're killing ourselves, guys, with this live cattle contract, and then we have deliveries like we've got now. What do the deliveries do? It scares off the few longs that we have playing at all. It scares off those longs, keeps a lid on the market, which it keeps our cash market under duress all the time, keeps us from realizing the market that we should be able to get. Of course, Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act would solve a lot of these problems if you had all of your bigger packers, every facility. They couldn't do it all in the north. It would be every facility. So the southern plains, those packers would have to participate at their level too, bring more people into the market. We'd have some price transparency, price discovery. I've even talked to sale barns in the southern plains that say, if we get this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, we're going to start trying to sell fat cattle, which your packers thumb their nose at right now. But if they're looking at having to get 12% of their purchases for the week in a negotiated manner, they may be scrambling, and they may be looking for a way to achieve that. And an auction barn with fat cattle in it would be a good way to do that. And it would bring back some more independent feeding in the South and some more custom feed yards. Talk about your grain market. Of course, it was up. Your corn was up, which helped push your feeder cattle down. But they were up so big on Monday that you would expect them to be down some. But corn was up 6 3/4 cents a bushel at 6.14. Beans up 28 3/4 cents at 14.28 3/4 cents a bushel. That's for new crops. How about your fat cattle trade? We really haven't established anything yet. We saw a little bit more trade in Iowa, about 300 head confirmed. 144 was your live price. We had some 146 on Monday in Iowa. 230 was your dress price. Nebraska, about 200 head confirmed at 232. These are at the top of last week's ranges. Your fat cattle market's going to be higher this week. Now Texas and Kansas will probably be happy with 135 or 136 again and don't have any leverage to get any more than that done. I can't stress to you how watered down your market is in the Southern Plains. You can count all the guys that sell cash cattle in Texas on one hand. In Kansas, it's two hands maybe. I talked to those guys. They're still driving a hard bargain. They're still staying in there. They have these sweetheart feed yard guys call them and root for them from the sidelines, from the bench. Hang right in there and get another buck or two. Yeah, right. Easy for you to say, guys, when you're going to ride our coattails next week and sell them on your sweetheart deal. We did have a fat cattle auction. Yankton, South Dakota, Stockman's Livestock there had a little bit lighter run, and they've had lighter runs here recently. But my friend Gary Marks there goes to that sale, and he reports it back to me. And I can't understand why Yankton, South Dakota is not reported by Federal State Market News. It's not a very far drive from the office there at Worthing, and they report all the markets at Worthing, and they can't send somebody down to Yankton to report that market when it's such a viable market on fat cattle and feeder cattle. I got to call a guy there that goes to the sale there and find out what went on so I can share it with you. It's ridiculous. Yankton, South Dakota, their conventional cattle sold $2 to $4.50 higher, from 140 to 144.75. And you think, my gosh, that's pretty darn good selling, and then be mostly loads of cattle, but they're putting some deals together too. Didn't have any completely drug-free cattle, or not enough to really test the market. Had some non-implanted cattle sell from 142 to 149.50. Wow. And the guys in the Southern Plains say, man, if we had an auction we could take them to that had regional packers in it, we could bid on those, and they say, well, then I'd have to pay commission. Hey, whenever you're using the CME or the Texas Live Cattle contract to market your cattle, you got to pay that yard if they end up being delivered in those sale barns that are certified stockyards to deliver in. You have to pay them a fee that's something very close to a regular commission rate, guys. And so that's not free. Talk about box beef cutout values. They were lower. They were higher some on Monday. They took it back on Tuesday. Choice cuts 264.73, down $1.51. Selects down 116 at 237.70. Your slaughter for the first 2 days of the week, 245,000 harvested on cattle. That's 3,000 less than last week, but 14,000 more than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. How about Pike Feeds? It's your do-all mill that strives to work around the needs of every individual operation, serving all of Missouri and Illinois with all your feed needs. Check out Pike Feeds. Talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction late in the day on Tuesday set at 174.87, down 68 cents. Some of those big blowout sales that we had there last week, they've fallen off our index now because it's a 7-day moving average, but we've still got elevated price levels, and 175 or thereabouts based on an 800-pound cash steer up through your middle 12 states. That's pretty waspy. I mean, it ain't as good as your spot feeder cattle contract, but we just talked about how it doesn't really correspond anyway. But on Tuesday, I traveled up to Folsom, New Mexico. If you guys are familiar with that area, that's a very rural area, be between Clayton and Raton, New Mexico. But I went out there and I couldn't believe how good it looked. I tell you what, west of Amarillo, it looks fantastic. And going up north too, Clayton is beautiful, and I grew up there, and it was rarely beautiful, but it looks really good around Clayton right now. Actually, when you get up to Folsom, up there to the elevations in the mountains there, it starts to be pretty dry. Now, they've had a few little showers the last couple of days, but went up there and had a memorial service for my late uncle, Cecil Newkirk, that passed away a few months ago up in eastern Washington in Moses Lake, Washington. But we had a final resting place and a final memorial for him, and I hate to burden you guys with that, but just kind of telling you what's going on. Talk about your feeder cattle markets, your big sales on Tuesday. How about Ozarks Regional Stockyard, West Plains, Missouri? Steady to $4 higher on steers and heifers. Spots as much as $6 higher. And that higher market, you know, and you think, well, it wasn't as high as some, but that higher market, steady to $4 higher and spot 6, happened on a run that was fairly light, pretty plain, mostly unweaned, and showing the signs of a really dry summer. Fescue hair, just cattle not looking their best, and they're still selling at higher prices like that. It's unbelievable. Check out, it's been really dry around there, and that is a rocky place. Everybody talks about being, you know, a week or 10 days away from a drought. That part of Missouri, south central Missouri, is one that is not lying about that. It's rocky there, used to a lot of rain. When you're not getting regular timely rains, it can get dry in a hurry there. They've got a special cow and bull sale, be a lot of drought out cows coming in there. This Saturday, the 13th, check out Ozarks Regional Stockyard in West Plains. You can get on to dvauction.com. Call them before if you want to be approved to bid, but get on to dvauction.com. View and bid that sale this Saturday, special cow and bull sale at Ozarks Regional. Talk about your Zoetis stick-out sale of the day. Denny Rezac Livestock Commission in St. Mary's, Kansas, sharply higher. Of course, they're not reported by any government agency either, but we report them here on the Feeder Flash. And you look at this automated market report out of Rezac Livestock Commission, had about 1,350 feeders there, which is fairly typical for them. Look at your best tested weights. 288 head of 7-weight steers, average 763, with a weighted average price on all of those 7-weight steers of $186.07, roughly $7 higher than last week on a similar run. 371 head of 8-weight steers in St. Mary's, Kansas, averaged $842, with a weighted average price on all those 8-weight steers of $179.19, roughly $4.50 higher than last week, helped by this one stick-out bunch that sold there. 120 head, weighed 833 pounds at $182.10. That's why it's your Zoetis stick-out sale of the day, Denny Rezac Livestock Commission. How about some other individual quotes and bigger around Beaver County Stockyards in Beaver, Oklahoma? We talk about them all the time. Check out these 5 loads of 9-weight steers that they had on Tuesday. It weighed mostly in the low to mid 9s there, selling from 167.5 to 170.110, and that's the Southern Plains guys. How about Kingsville Livestock? That's west central Missouri there, south and east of Kansas City. Steve Varner, a friend of mine, sold 3 loads, 165 head, 842-pound steers. They bring $178, guys. Go back down in the Southern Plains. Bill Martin had a good sale in Wildorado, Texas at Lone Star Stockyards there. And, you know, it's tough to get those big prices in the Southern Plains for good yearlings whenever we don't have a good fat cattle market there, and our freight is so expensive to get them to a place that does. But Lone Star Stockyards, Wildorado, Texas, sold 130 head, 839-pound steers at $170, and that's a pretty good ticket, guys. How about Alma, Nebraska? Alma Livestock Auction sold 60 head, 929-pound steers for $177. Big time quote, but not as big as the best quote that I saw anywhere on Tuesday in your Macrocin. No BS, top quote for the day, come out of Creighton Livestock Market in Creighton, Nebraska. 158 head of 1,025-pound steers at $177. And that's your feeder flash for Wednesday.